Welcome to Swiftly Spoken, a fan-made Taylor Swift podcast in which we analyse her artistry, including her lyricism, music videos, and full album retrospectives. We are your hosts, Cameron and Lisa, and this week is the third anniversary of Lover's lead single Me, and we're going to be going back and looking at the song and trying to answer the question, did the song truly flop? Okay, so in this episode, we're going to be going over Me's release, reception, and the records broken by the song, which is a very polarizing song for fans and critics alike. And then we're going to be discussing the song with the full context of the Lover era 3 years after its release.
So before we begin, we'll give a small disclaimer that in this episode we will be giving both objective points of view as well as our own opinions. Of course, everyone will feel differently about Me because it's a very discussed song that divides the fandom. Also, we mean no offense by using the term flop and speaking about musical releases that many feel didn't live up to certain expectations. A lot of people will judge something as a flop according to its chart success and longevity, how popular it may be outside of the fandom with the GP, or considering critics' opinions. So what we're going to do is discuss these factors and also consider Me in its creator's context to see if it contributed to Taylor's personal growth as an artist at that time.
The lead up to the release of Me was a shift in Taylor's kind of traditional promotional strategies as it contrasted with the silence throughout the Reputation era. Once again, Taylor attended lots of events and began to give interviews to promote her new music. And in this way, it was kind of more of a return to the 1989 era where Taylor had a lot more control in terms of the promotion of the lead single and then the eventual album. The release had been teased for months while Taylor was kind of hinting at new music and changing up her Instagram layout. But on the 13th of April 2019, Taylor finally posted a 13-day countdown that would lead to the release of her seventh studio album's lead single, Me. Throughout these 13 days, Taylor hyped up the song by posting photos from the music video and making a couple of brief appearances. So on the last day, this culminated in an appearance at the Butterfly mural painted by Kelsey Montague in Nashville, where it was revealed that the song title was Me. Soon after, Taylor also revealed that the song was a collaboration with Brendan Urie from Panic at the Disco, and on the 26th of April, the song and music video was dropped. Me is classed as a bubblegum pop song, and it contains synth sounds and has a marching band drumline.
So the release of Me was very, very different to anything that we'd seen through the Reputation era, and there was a lot of excitement and hype built up around it. Like, I remember that 13-day countdown, and it was just crazy. So many theories, like posts every single day from Taylor. She was like making appearances, and it was crazy to see that contrast and also the color contrast from the darkness of Reputation to the pastels of this early Lover. Well, we didn't even know it was Lover at that point, but yeah, the early Me era. It was so exciting, and it all led to Me. So one of the things that many people talk about is how this immense creation of hype could have eventually been detrimental to the release of Me, because creating so much expectation around something always leads to a bit of disappointment.
A couple of weeks before, when Taylor posted the palm trees with the 7 palm trees, and then the like on the 6th step and the 5 holes in the fence and all of that stuff, there was this suggestion that that was a countdown then, and there was just so much
Yeah.
hype, and it was when that was kind of when the Easter eggs were really just like was becoming such a huge thing, and Taylor obviously did that interview with Entertainment Weekly where she discussed about Easter eggs, and then the stamps in the Reputation calendar, the wax seals, sorry, in the calendar. The Me era is what created all these Easter eggs and constant hype that we still now have, and almost false hype and false anticipation for stuff, because it was just there was so much going on and so much countdowning and Easter egg, and because no one really understood what these photos were of that Taylor was posting. Obviously, only
Hmm.
upon Me's release did we realize that it was from the music video. The one of Taylor's earring that was like a heart that was made up of jewels. I remember people thinking that each jewel had like different photos in, and people were counting like individual.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, it was just absolutely
The
crazy.
sequins.
But it was very exciting at the time. I remember every day kind of going on Instagram and being like, oh my gosh, what's today's post? You know, maybe that is why. Maybe there was a feeling of maybe disappointment upon its release because there was so much hype created around it.
Honestly, I don't think there was so much hype around any single prior to this. I know obviously we did get teasing of singles, but then like with Shake It Off, it was kind of different because we got the Yahoo live premiere and stuff, and then it was going to drop. But it wasn't. This was like months leading
Yeah.
up to it. it was like breaking her silence in the Elle magazines and doing
Yep.
interviews again, and it was a couple of months of things that led up to the countdown and then eventually to the song. So it was definitely, it was just so much excitement. It
Yeah.
really was.
Yeah, and even in those Elle magazines that were, yeah, months prior, she mentioned Brendan Urie and Panic at the Disco, which
Yep.
she then said was an so it was just like there was just this ridiculous hinting going on. And obviously even going all the way back to like the delicate vertical video where she had the kind of
Her nail
nail
varnish.
polish, yeah, that was
Mhm.
the same color as the kind of colors of the next album.
It's interesting to see that since then, obviously because of how the world has been and what the projects that she's got going on at the moment are different. But since then, Taylor hasn't released a lead single in that same manner. Obviously, for both Folklore and Evermore, the leads were released at the same time as the rest of the album. And then obviously the recording projects, each one has been something different, but it's not, the same as a lead single that has never been heard before. So it's interesting to see. And do you think that she would ever create so much hype around a lead single again in that manner, or do you think that she kind of felt burnt by the experience?
I honestly don't think we'll probably ever have that again. I think it was quite unique for the Lover kind of rollout, and obviously this was the first time she was on Republic, so I'm not sure maybe if
Hmm.
Republic were really, really pushing for a new. I think there was concern whether, because even in Miss Americana, Taylor kind of said that this is the last time she'll be able to catch that success and be that successful, and I think that they were just so worried. I think in her head she was worried that this would be the last time she was ever, kind of mainstream and successful, that they
Which
just
is
absolutely,
crazy.
it's mad, yeah, and it's mad now when you think about it with the release of
Folklore,
Folklore and
Evermore.
Evermore,
Yeah,
Fearless and Red Taylor's version. But
yeah.
I think that they really were just trying to capitalize on it and just create so much of a
Hmm.
hype that no one could ignore it, and that it was like everyone knew about it, which they were very successful at doing. Crazy teasing and hinting. It was a very interesting time to be a fan, definitely.
Once the song was released, it was very polarizing, however. So some people adore the song and they loved the lightheartedness of it and its positive message, but others believed it to be too childish and not standing up to Taylor's previous releases, especially the contrast between the darker and more mature side of Look What You Made Me Do and Reputation as a whole, and then Me being very, very different. These are some examples of some critics' reception. So from the negative side, some examples include the review from The Ringer said Me is a goofy Disney pop confection with an earworm chorus and a certain try hard insidiousness to it. In an article titled Me is Everything Wrong with Pop, the Atlantic writers mentioned that Me has almost none of the elements that once made Swift interesting, but it does have a dolphin screech for a chorus. Pitchfork posted that it's a showcase for the worst and weakest aspects of Swift's work and added that it is not hard to write a better song than this. And finally, the critic for the spin off said that I was prepared to like it until Taylor yelled, "Spelling is fun," and from that point on in the video, I felt a little bit sick.
These reviews I just think are so unnecessarily harsh. I think that these
They
people
went
were
in.
clearly, yeah, they were clearly not in a very good mood when they listened to me. Like, it's not the most impressively lyrical song. It's like, whoa, the metaphors of those, it's not like that at all, and it was never intended to be like that. To like say that it has a dolphin screech for a chorus, and that anyone could write a better song. It's just like,
I'd
well,
like to
okay.
see that.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
like to
right. Go
see
on
you
then.
write.
Go
You go
ahead.
write a better song. You go write, like a big pop song. At the end of the day, everyone has an opinion. These are people's opinions, but I do
Of
think
course.
that they are, and also they are intended for clickbait to get people to read them and look at it. So sometimes they are always, no one really wants to read a review that's kind of, yeah, it was all right, because that's not an interesting to read, is it? But it's
Hmm.
interesting to read it when someone absolutely slates it. So you also have to kind of factor that in. But I do think that it is a bit harsh, some of these reviews, and a bit unnecessary, especially
Especially
considering Me is such a positive song, and these are all just so.
exactly like the message behind it is so. I know you kind of have to be in a headspace to listen to Me, but that's the same with any music. You have to be in a headspace to listen to folklore,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
kind of really resonate with it. So yeah, I get that it isn't the most grown up kind of song, but to say Me is everything wrong with pop, that's kind of harsh considering that pop got a lot wrong with it. Like there's a lot going on in lyrics and just like throw out songs. And to
Yeah,
say that Me is is the worst part of it all, I think that's a bit harsh, to be honest with you. I
I
know
think
it's
so
not her
as well.
best work, but it's difficult to just say that and be like, yeah, I stand by that.
Exactly. I just think it's just slightly unnecessarily harsh. Um, But there is kind of merit to some of the arguments with the kind of Disney pop. Um,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong, and also an earworm of a chorus. There's nothing wrong with that. Taylor's done that before on purpose with "We're Never Ever Getting Back Together." She wanted that to be an earworm of a chorus so that when her ex heard it, he wouldn't be able to get it out of his head. That was on purpose. So
Hmm.
sometimes it's like some of those things aren't necessarily negative. Surely to be a good pop song, it has to have an earworm of a chorus that is incredibly easy to remember, and that's the whole point of a good pop song. Surely at the end of the day. So I think that yeah, these were a little bit too harsh.
Yeah, and I do agree there's some points that were made, like the spelling is fun, lyric, we'll get into it, I'm sure, but you I guess there's something for everyone. And now on the other hand, we're going to look at the positive reviews. The Rolling Stones writer Rob Sheffield mentioned that it was campy, bubbly, and a totally canonical Taylor lead single. Billboard critic mentioned that it is similarly shiny and the tongue-in-cheek self-assessment of blank space shows up in the verses, but it's also much more broad, way more cheerful, and delivered without an ounce of sarcasm or snark. Writing for Forbes, the author stated that it isn't just a pop song, it's the momentary escape we all need. And finally, the review in The Independent included that Swift once again proves her mastery of the infectious pop hook in one of the most drastic reinventions of her career to date.
Yeah, no, I do really like that review from The Independent. I think that that's very true. And they kind of see an infectious pop hook as something that's positive rather than something that's negative. And that also and understand that Taylor reinvents herself each time, so it's never going to be the same as what it was before. And even the Rolling Stone reviewer respected that that all of Taylor's past lead singles are so sonically different from each other. And also the album, when you think of Red, We're Never Ever Getting Back Together doesn't really sound like the majority of Red. Shake It Off isn't like the majority of 1989. Neither is Look What You Made Me Do on Reputation, and the same with Me and Lover. There's always a slight sonic difference.
It's definitely a polarizing song, which is what we said. Objectively, there is no way to tell if a song is good or bad because there's always going to be subjective thoughts in that. So if you're in a good mood and you listen to this, I've listened to this song and be like, oh, this is such a sweet song. And then if you're not in that mood or you kind of want to be more of a snobby music kind of person, you listen to it and you're like, nah, this is, what is this?
Yeah, and that's kind of the case with a lot of music reviews. I know Pitchfork have had lots of problems before where they have refused to actually review Taylor Swift albums until she called them out on it.
Mm.
So there is a kind of snobby attitude sometimes in music reviewers, and that if it isn't really indie and out there and totally different, and it's just a kind of classic pop song, it's almost like, oh no, that's not exciting enough. So yeah, I
But
think there is.
it's funny because when it's too indie or too out there, it also gets snubbed.
Yeah,
So like Lorde is an example of that. When she released Solar Power, a lot of people were like, well, this is too edgy, this is too out there,
this
this
is
is
too
like,
different from, yeah, this
it's
is not like
boring.
melodrama. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like, well, I don't know, what do you want? What do
that's
you
the
want
thing.
in the
You can never
end?
appease. That's the thing. Is like you can never really appease these kind of music critics. And it's always one extreme or the other. It's the best thing ever or it's the worst thing that's ever happened. Okay, so it'd also be interesting to mention fans' initial opinions upon the song's release. So one example that probably would have possibly hurt Taylor's feelings is on a Tumblr post about the song. One fan mentioned that they thought that it wasn't a lead single because Taylor hadn't announced the name or any details of the album at that point, and they said that it could have possibly been part of the soundtrack for Secret Life of Pets 2, because some of the aesthetics for the Secret Life of Pets 2 and the colour schemes kind of matched with those of Me. Taylor actually reblogged this post and announced that it was actually the lead single. How do you feel about this? I remember at the time it was quite awkward.
Yeah, because Taylor was on Tumblr a lot during the Lover era and especially during like releases of things. And I know that, and again, it's fine that everyone has their own opinions and everyone kind of can feel and not like the song. That's absolutely fine. Like I know that that person probably wasn't doing it with any malice, like they wasn't doing it on purpose, and they
No.
probably thought that it was never going to be seen by Taylor. But yeah, that must have really hurt her feelings to see something that she'd worked on for such a long time kind of be looked down upon like, no, this can't be the lead. This is just like a children's film soundtrack.
Yeah, to kind of diss it and also the fact that it's just like a children, it just kind
Yeah.
of disses it.
Yeah,
And
when she was so proud of it as well. And,
exactly,
and
yeah.
we can see that in the Miss Americana writing sessions. She
Yeah,
was
she
really like,
was so proud
Mm.
of it, so excited for the music video, so excited for its release.
That's why I think it's very difficult to really, really hate Me. If I mean, if you're just a casual fan, obviously you can look at it and be like, yeah, I hate it, that's it.
Mm,
But when you take into account, like, you're a big Swiftie and you take into account Taylor's feelings and you watch Miss Americana, after I watched that, I had to go back and listen to Me again because it kind of did open a different perspective for me. Like, oh, she was really, really happy doing this, and it was such a contrast to what she had done before.
exactly.
And
Yeah, that's kind
yeah,
of how I felt. Upon Me's release, I wasn't the biggest fan at all,
no,
and
neither was I.
and to this day, I'm still not really a big fan of the song at all. But I can still appreciate Me's kind of involvement in Taylor's kind of musical creation and evolution as an artist.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that it's totally unfair to just absolutely just annihilate the song because yeah, when you see how excited she was upon its release and how much promo and effort she put into it as well, it must have felt quite soul destroying to be like, oh, and people don't even like it and they don't even think that it's part of the album or that it deserves to be part of an album. You know, I wasn't Me's biggest fan. Upon watching the music video, as the song was developing, I was like, oh, I'm really not too sure about this. This is one of the first Taylor Swift songs ever where I've just kind of been like, oh, I'm not sure how I'm feeling. And obviously with the lyrics of the bridge, the spelling is fun lyrics, it was just kind of like, oh no, this is really not it. Oh my gosh, what's happening? But and then I think with the madness of the fandom all being like that, it just made that kind of initial release week quite mad, confusing, and it was a very strange time to be a fan, definitely.
Again, opinions were very much divided. They still are now because I have seen a lot of posts of people that will get behind Me and defend it until the cows come home. Like, they
Yeah,
will go for it. Then I've seen people that absolutely hate it and trash it weekly and will make memes out of it and stuff. And that's fine as well because, again, in the end, we all have our opinions. So, breaking down some of the criticisms, one of them was the message behind the song. Taylor said that she wanted to make a pop song with a melody that would get stuck in people's heads, that contained a message to make them feel better about themselves, not worse. And she described the message as embracing your individuality and really owning it. So it's true that at this time in pop music, popular songs did include a lot of, like, comparing yourself to other people or only feeling special or important if you have certain characteristics, if you act a certain way, if you have money, if you have a lot of friends, stuff like that. So a song like this is important, in my opinion, from someone as big as Taylor, who has such a big and varied fandom. And with that in mind, fandoms do have to expand at some point because if they don't expand, they will just die off. With Me, I think that Taylor expanded the fandom to include younger fans as well as older ones. So obviously, people that have stuck with her from the beginning will probably always stick with her. But then, with eras such as the Lover era being so much in the public eye, and then including music that was so varied, like, people who were younger could enjoy it, and then you had other songs on Lover that were enjoyed by, older fans. So it kind of broadened the horizon of what a Swiftie, who is a Swiftie. And I think a lot of younger fans did become fans and Swifties in the Lover era.
yeah, I agree. I think that yeah, you have to broaden your fan base all the time and appeal to new audiences because you know and the thing is lots of fans were you know they were 12, 11, 10, 8, however old when they discovered Taylor initially, so there's nothing wrong with 8-year olds now loving Taylor in 2019 at that time. So I think that yeah, you have to broaden your fan base and kind of your influence, so that, and especially the fact that this song was intended to be so commercial, in order for it to be that way, it had to reach a really kind of broad age bracket.
Moving on to another point of contention, the lyrics. The lyrics were written by Taylor, Joel Little, the producer of the song, and Brendan Urie, and they were very much criticized for being too childish, especially concentrating on the bridge of the song. The bridge of the song, as we know, included originally "Hey kids, spelling is fun," and eventually it was taken out of the digital version, and it doesn't appear on the album version either. So what do you think about the lyrics, and especially that bridge lyric?
I think yeah, the bridge lyrics in general with you can't spell awesome without me. There's
Oof,
no I in team, and I do
but there
think
isn't
that
me.
yeah, but there is a me. I think that for me, I do find them slightly cringy. I'm not going to lie, and at the time, I just really couldn't there was just something about them. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just not feeling these lyrics. And I think as well, Brendan Urie was the one that, I'm sure in a live stream that Taylor did before the Billboard Music Awards, Brendan Urie said that he was the one that suggested "Hey Kids, Spelling is Fun,"
Yeah,
which
but
is
she loved it. She
but
loved
she
it.
loved it.
So
Yeah, she included
yeah,
it, but that was him that decided that. I also find it quite sad that clearly Taylor was very aware that people absolutely despised the "Hey Kids, Spelling is Fun," that she
I
took it out of
know.
the album version. I do think that's quite sad because it just, when I have the Lover CD on, or even on my iTunes when I bought it, and I hear it, it's that emptiness is almost quite sad,
The silence
because
is
it's like some of the
deafening, yeah.
happiness, yeah, some of the happiness was kind of taken out of it, and the fact that someone went back and was like, no, we need to get rid of that. And yeah, the fact that now digital, I don't have Spotify, so on Spotify, can you not hear?
No,
Gosh,
I
I find
think
that quite sad.
there is a single version that I think that originally it did have it. I don't know if that version was edited, but in the album version on Spotify and all of that, it's not there.
Yeah, which I just find quite sad.
The bridge is the weakest part of the song, in my opinion. Again, I guess it is kind of purposeful because they wanted to make like this marching band moment, chant thing.
Yeah,
I don't enjoy it at all. I do think there's some cute lyrics here and there in the verses. I love living in winter, I am your summer. I love that. Like baby doll when it comes to a lover. I love that bit. Like
yeah.
it's nicely rhymed, it's sweet, and the song itself, the lyrics are very sweet and they are very uplifting. But yeah, there is a lot of moments that I do kind of cringe,
Yeah,
unfortunately. But again, like you said, it is quite sad because she was proud of it and she was happy with it. And then to take that out because of the backlash that it got. If it was a lyric that was like really offensive or, got a lot of backlash for the wrong reasons, of course, like that's wrong. But when it's just like such an innocent lyric
yeah.
been hounded on so much that it was taken out, that makes me kind of sad.
And also, obviously, what was quite nice about it was that it was another one from "We're Never Ever Getting Back Together" all the way through to "Me." The bridges
Mm,
had this kind of iconic talking in it. We obviously have it with the phone call when "We're Never Ever Getting Back Together." Then the kind of conversation over the "Shake It Off" kind of bridge. Then obviously the phone call again on "Look What You Made Me Do," and then obviously with "Me," the "Hey Kids." So it's a shame that was kind of taken out because that had become quite an iconic part of Taylor Swift lead singles.
But also another thing that we have to remark upon is that lead singles in general, which is something that you mentioned earlier, they have to be radio friendly. They're not going to be like amazing lyrically written songs. All you have to do is listen to the radio to gather that much. But in comparison to Taylor's previous ones, the same thing kind of happened. I mean, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, Shake It Off. The purpose of it was, a catchy little hook. I hate you, I love you. It is what it is. They're
Yeah.
not like amazing lyrically strong songs.
Even on their release, there was lots of criticism. I remember with "We're Never Ever Going Back Together," it was like, this is too pop. And then with "Shake It Off," it was like, oh, this is so different from everything else. Oh, and then with "Look What Made Me Do," it was like, oh, this is so different. And the chorus, I don't like the repetitiveness of the chorus, and the talking over the phone, I remember lots of people saying was cringe. So it's like they're almost always met with some kind of criticism, and oh, this is wrong, it's too
Yeah.
different.
I mean, they're so big. They are
Yeah,
leads. So there is a
exactly.
lot of, again, it's the hype that is built around them that will always lead to some people being disappointed.
It's created an expectation of what they think is coming in their own heads
Exactly.
because of all the kind of hype and lead up, that then when what they're actually given doesn't meet up to the expectations. And this is something that we see quite often nowadays with constant rumours of albums, and then when it doesn't happen, even though Taylor has never said that it's going to happen, it's purely an expectation that people have created. Suddenly there's an annoyance there and a kind of, oh, that's not what I thought would happen. It's like, well, maybe just wait till you find it out. And it's the
It
same
was
with
literally a
"Me."
made up rumor. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. It's the
Yeah.
same with "Me." It's like, Taylor never said what that the song was going to be, all too well 10-minute version.
No,
She
no.
had she had hinted
Yeah.
that there was this pastel, fun, vibe, and that's exactly what we got. I
It's
think.
usually the fandom that hypes up things too much, and that was something that, just on a tangent here, that happened a lot when we had secret sessions and then people would hype up songs that were released afterwards. The biggest example being Gorgeous.
Gorgeous lyrics that
That
cut
was
through
like such a,
glass.
yeah, that was a crazy time. So yeah, people went to the secret sessions, they heard Gorgeous, and then it was released like a couple of weeks later or whatever, and people were just like, oh my god, this song is going to destroy you. It's got lyrics
Yeah.
that will cut glass. It's just like,
Yeah.
And I saw it again the other week, like a compilation of people reacting to Gorgeous being released. And then obviously they built up all this hype, and then Gorgeous was released, which is a cute song again, but it's not the most lyrically strong songs ever. It is a
And
nice
obviously
song.
was very different to what we'd had during Reputation, because at that
Oh
time
my
we'd
god,
had, kind
yeah.
of had these really like heavy, bombastic,
It
slightly
was the
kind
other
of
side
angry,
of
aggressive. Yeah, it was the other side of Reputation and more verging on the kind of lover feel, really.
But people built it up in such a way that when it was released, it kind of couldn't win anyway because it was always going to be so hyped up. People were going to be disappointed,
Yeah.
whatever it had been.
The thing that is quite most interesting, I think, about Me though, is that obviously it was kind of the biggest criticism. Oh, it's so childish, it's too childish, it's aimed at children. But one of the original lyrics that we hear in Taylor's recording session of this song when she's writing and recording Me for in the Miss Americana film is that one of the original lyrics is, "I know I said some bullshit on the phone," which
Yes.
I find so. I remember when I first heard that after watching Miss Americana for the first time, it was like, what? Like, that was
I
a bit
want
like,
that
oh,
lyric.
yeah,
I
I want
want
that
that
lyric.
lyric.
And also, it's mad that that was then included on a song that then had a lyric like, "Hey kids, spelling is fun,"
I
you know,
know, it's
and
just
that,
like the contrasts of it all.
yeah, and that would have been like only really the second time that Taylor had ever sworn in a song as well. So it's just like
Mm.
that was still quite new. Whereas nowadays, when Taylor swears in songs, it's not really much of an issue. We've heard it so many times now with Folklore and Evermore. Reputation, I remember with the I Did Something Bad, that was like, oh my gosh, like Taylor's like swearing in a song, what? So the fact that that was then going to be a possible lyric for the lead single of a song like Me, and I wonder maybe if that had been included in its actual official released lyrics, if then the childish criticism would have been used, because obviously that's not
I don't know, it would have been such a
contrast.
yeah, like to say that and then to go on
Go,
and
hey
continue.
kids.
Moving on to the song's production, the song was produced by Joel Little, and it was initially written as like a slower, kind of more acoustic slash beat piano ballad. So the contrast again, it's the same with the lyric that we just mentioned. To see that and then for it to be transformed into this bombastic drumline song with the synth and the bubblegum pop of it all, it was quite a contrast to see her in Miss Americana, kind of like writing it on a piano. And what is really interesting is that Freya Ridings, who is an amazing singer songwriter, did a cover of Me for the BBC Live Lounge, and she did so on a piano and really made the song sound kind of like much more grown up than it was, much more beautiful than it could have been interpreted to be. So I would have loved to have seen Taylor do that as well at some point, or even I know that she probably wouldn't have ever released it as a lead in that manner, but you know, a live version of her on a piano, slowing it down, adding in that bullshit line, that would have been amazing for me. What do
Yeah,
you
me
think?
too. I agree. I do agree. And again, this might be quite a controversial opinion, but I'm not the biggest fan of Joel Little's production.
Hmm.
Some of my kind of least favorite songs on Love are other ones often produced by him. I think all of them are. And I don't know if maybe that was maybe a bit of the problem as well. I'm not. I just think, yeah, I just don't know. I would have, yeah, I would have really liked for it to have stayed in how it was originally kind of written on the piano. I think that it would have had a kind of more. I don't know. I do quite like. I really do like its piano version, and I think yeah, it would have been quite nice if Taylor had released a kind of piano version remix of the song. Okay, so next we're going to quickly discuss some of the live performances. So lots of the performances of Me, Taylor did solo, so she sang kind of Brendan's part. However, some of the performances were with Brendan, one of which was at the Billboard Music Awards. Its performances I found quite confusing. We then also had a performance on like Germany's Next Top Model, which I also found was very strange and random. But my favourite out of all of
Yeah, that
them,
really was. Yeah.
yeah, very strange. Like such a random. I just thought it was such a random. But
Yeah.
my favourite one is the Graham Norton performance
Oh
out of the
yes, me
TV
too.
performances.
Yeah, I love that one. She looks so good as
Um,
well, and
yeah,
that interview is also really good. So,
my least favourite one is probably the Voice performance
which one? The Voice in the
with the big.
USA or France? Was she with
Oh gosh,
Brendan?
I'd forgotten about the French one. Yeah, no, the French one I quite like, but the one with the big butterfly.
With Brendan. Okay. Yeah.
Brendan, yeah, with Brendan. The French one was without Brendan. I quite
Yes.
liked the French one. The camera angles and stuff were really cool. They quite made it quite intense.
I love the Billboard one. I do, I have to say. I know that it
I quite
did
liked the
spark
Billboard one.
up a lot of controversy, which, you know, that's a whole another kind of worms. But I did love what she was wearing. I loved how it was such a big performance, like the floating in the air and
Exactly. I
stuff
feel
like
like,
that. I
and
loved
also
that.
the intro with the kind of drums, I feel like
Yeah.
that would have been how it would have been performed on tour. That
Oof.
one really
I
gave
don't
me kind
know.
of tour
After what
vibes.
happened, I don't know if she would have scrapped that idea.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
But yeah, I get
But
what you mean.
that kind of gave me like tour kind of vibes. But what was quite interesting about the live performances is that obviously the Hey Kids spelling is fun element was brought back, even
Yes.
though it was then going to be taken off of the album. It was almost like given a new lease of life, because it's quite fun fan chants and stuff like that. And I think that it is an element of the song which it would have just felt like it was missing something if that hadn't been part of the live performances.
Especially with the fans and them chanting it, like you said. There are some. I think there's a couple of performances where she doesn't say it at all,
No,
right?
I think for Germany's Next Top Model one,
Yeah,
she doesn't,
for example.
and I also think on Graham Norton, I don't think she does. And there's just this kind of awkwardness because she kind of removes her mic away from her
Yeah, and
mouth
it's
and
like,
just kind of, and then it's just like, oh, just say it, like you know.
yeah. But when there's an audience with fans and that, like in the GMA, more the
Yeah,
performance, the concert on the day that Lover was released, that's another
yeah,
one where everyone's like screaming it.
yeah.
And it's kind of like that must have been bittersweet because obviously you've taken it off of the album and all of this, but at the same time there's like thousands of fans that are screaming it like, yes, spelling is fun.
Fun, exactly, yeah. And I think it would have been really good fun on Loverfest as well. I think it would have been a really cool
Mm,
moment on tour. She
she
was
was
promoting
fun.
in France, Germany, and then obviously she then later went on to go to China and had a huge kind of promotional interview in this massive stadium and then performed. So there was a kind of real. She was supposed to be performing in Australia, but obviously because of the controversies of the event that she was supposed to be
Mm,
performing at,
that
that
was
never
cancelled.
happened. Obviously, she performed in the UK, so there was like it was a return back to the kind of 1989 promotional feel where it was just like mass performances everywhere.
It was quite well praised by many, many critics. It was one of the highlights of the release, in fact, and it was so full of Easter eggs. And it really encompasses the pastel and the colourful images of the era, and it became really, really popular and it broke a lot of records as we're going to see now. One of these records was the Vivo 24-hour record at that time. So the video amassed in 24 hours 65.2 million views. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was madness. But to be fair, the amount of times I watched it, I probably watched it half of those times. And also, Taylor was very clever. She was very clever in
Yeah.
getting people to like rewatch it with
No, you
the, oh
haven't
no, you
found
haven't worked out the, you haven't found the album yet, even though like she said, oh yeah, it's in the lyric, which is obviously Baby Doll when it comes to a lover. Then
Yeah.
we could literally see it written in the back, and everyone was like, "Oh, is it Lover?" And we were like, "Oh, well, if she says we haven't found it yet, I guess not." And then it was like, "Oh, is it Kaleidoscope?" Or there was all these different things when it was just sat there in the background quite plainly, and we worked out in about the first 2 minutes. But Taylor was very clever at getting you to kind of go back and keep watching it.
Other records broken and awards received by Me, the song in general. One of them was the biggest jump in the Billboard charts, going from number 100, how it entered the chart, to number 2. And it was blocked by Old Town Road at that time.
Which
And
was
it
like the
broke.
biggest song, like that was like the biggest song of 2019. But like
Oh, yeah.
Taylor was up against serious competition with that song. Unfortunately, Taylor seems to be quite unlucky with when she releases sometimes because she's like up against like the biggest song of the year that is just kind of been like dominating charts for months. So it was a shame that it was kind of upon Old Town Road's kind of that was like when Old Town Road was at its peak.
Yeah, there's a lot of remixes.
Yeah, then there was a remix with a member of BTS, I believe. So it was just kind of like they were really capitalizing on its success. So trying to kind of tackle that was almost impossible, which is one of the reasons why I believe Taylor, upon its release with things like the vinyl, where there was so many different vinyl variants, picture discs, and then like rehearsal performance versions, and I think that they were intended to help kind of its
Definitely.
streaming, and obviously then that was something that Taylor repeated with kind of folklore, but then hasn't ever really done since because of the new rules with vinyl sales and stuff and shipping. But it was really interesting that I remember the slight disappointment when we got to number 2, and it was almost like, oh, all this streaming and all of this buying all the different versions and variants of vinyl CD, and it was a slight letdown. Really, it was just like, oh, it would have been so nice to have seen it gone number 1.
Yeah, it did break that really, really cool jump record, though,
Yes.
beating the record that it was previously held by Kelly Clarkson with My Life Would Suck Without You. So that was such a long time as well that no one had ever had such a big jump.
Some of Taylor's most famous songs, like I Knew Your Trouble and stuff, never went
Yeah,
number
number
one.
twos.
So,
Yep.
yeah, so, you know, and obviously since then Taylor has had number ones with Cardigan, Willow, and All Too Well 10-minute version, obviously. So there's so much more to a song than just its chart position. But it is
Right.
nice for it to go number one so that it's almost like validation for,
The
you know,
artist.
the artist, yeah. But I think that sometimes people put way too much hype maybe on that rather than actually just appreciating the song for what it is for them.
In Amazon Music, the most first day streams, most first week streams, and most on demand voice requests with Alexa of a single debut on the platform at that point. And also, even now, it's one of Taylor's most streamed songs on Spotify. So it is quite crazy because a lot of people I know before Lover kind of criticized Taylor as not being a streaming artist and being more of an album artist, like selling albums but not getting lots of streams. But that has completely changed now. At the moment, she is the most streamed female artist of the decade.
And the fact that obviously her kind of music was kept off streaming until like
Exactly, for such a long
2017.
time.
Yeah, and even things like
Hmm.
Reputation upon its initial release wasn't put on streaming till a couple of weeks after. So Taylor hasn't really been on streaming services for very long at all. So the fact that she is now becoming like a titan in streaming shows her kind of mass appeal recently. And yeah, Me was kind of the first kind of step into that, the first
Hmm.
kind of time where they really pushed streaming and that streaming was becoming a massive element of Taylor's success.
As for awards, the video got Best Video in the MTV EMA Awards, and in the MTV VMA Awards, it got Best Visual Effects. In the BMI Pop Awards, it was an award-winning song, and it's also important to mention that this song, just as Taylor had been promoting it internationally, it did become kind of an international hit as well. Especially in places like Japan and China, where she won an MTV VMA Japan Award for Best Female International Artist Video and a Hito Music Award.
Okay, so now we're going to quickly discuss our opinions before we finish the episode. So, Lisa, do you think that it was a bad decision for lead or as a lead single, or do you think that actually Me was the perfect lead single for Lover?
Taking into account everything that we've discussed, like, you know, the controversies that it had around it and the extreme amount of hype, I don't think it was the worst decision. I know a lot of people will look at Lover and say, oh no, this one could have been it, this one could have been it. I always see Cruel Summer. But I
Me too.
don't think that it would have been the same. I don't think it would have been as logical in her career and the context for what Taylor was going through personally as well. Because we have to remember that Taylor is someone who is very, very personally involved in her songwriting and in the music that she releases. And she does everything very purposefully. So I think that for me, context is key with Me. And in a way, I believe that it was needed after Reputation. Drastically different. I'm not going to play into a narrative of me being this, oh, I'm so vexed by everything that went on,
Yeah,
and I'm now
kind of
going
a
to be.
vengeful. Yeah, there was this kind
Exactly.
of that she was this vengeful person that wrote
Which
a song
again,
about her exes and all her enemies. That was kind
yes,
of
that's
the
it. And Reputation, again, is very misunderstood because that album is not really about that, but it is the image that it kind of gets. And after everything that went down, and the image that a lot of people had of Taylor. So I think Me was completely different because it sings about self-reflection and you in a relationship that is going well, and you know you're not insulting anyone or throwing shade, or I don't know. It was so different to other pop songs as well at that time that obviously it's going to stand out because of that. But for me, in its context, I think that it works. I know that a lot of people might be like, "No, I'm crazy for saying that," but that's how I feel. I wouldn't change it, to be honest with you. What about you?
Yeah, no, I do agree totally on all of those points. And yeah, in a kind of perfect reality world, I probably would have picked something different. But then from
Hmm.
Lover, it's hard to really know what to pick because the song Lover, I don't think would have. I just don't know if that is really a lead single kind of song. And then other things like You Need to Calm Down, its message was more important with when it was released. And that message wouldn't have really kind of gone down very well, I don't think, if it had been a lead because the
Right.
lead's message is always slightly different. Whereas Taylor, when she released You Need to Calm Down, it was obviously with the Equality Act and her like publicly advocating for like LGBTQ plus rights. And obviously then the music video, her kind of squashing her beef with Katy Perry. And I think that would
Hmm.
have all got a bit lost maybe if that was then the lead.
Been too much
Bec-
discussion.
yeah,
surrounding
there would have
other
been
things.
too much going on with other stuff, so I think that that wouldn't have necessarily worked. And I think Cruel Summer, maybe if it was done right, it would have been quite successful. But I think that it's almost slightly weirdly mythologized in the fandom that it would have been this huge hit and would have been so massive when I
Yeah,
think that lots of people find the message of Cruel Summer slightly confusing, don't really know necessarily what it's
yeah,
about. And also the whole idea of Cruel Summer, I just don't know how it would have gone down. And I think that Cruel Summer is probably one of the reasons why then it never became a single towards the end of the Lover era because of all the stuff with the pandemic and then been slightly of a misstep, I think, with the kind of Cruel Summer and then what was going on in the world. So I think it's hard to kind of pick a lead single, but I think in an idealized world, I would have probably picked Cruel Summer personally. But Me
I get that.
makes sense, and it makes total sense why Me was chosen and why Taylor felt like it was the one for the lead of Lover. I also, again, very controversial. I think that the song would have been better as solo, as
Yeah, I actually agree.
I prefer all of Taylor's solo performances of it. I really like her singing that second verse, and I think that that would have gone down better as her as the solo singer. And I do think that if Hey Kids Spelling is Fun wasn't in the original, I think that also would have gone down better. I think that
Yeah.
if there had just been slight tweaks, I think,
Oh
then
no, I completely agree. Me is not a perfect song. It's not like this amazing pop perfection song. It's no Shake It Off.
no,
Let's face it.
definitely not. And I think that was the hope, I think, was that it
Yeah,
was going to
the
be
next Shake It Off.
the next Shake It Off. And Shake It Off obviously has a very positive message of, don't ignore the haters and stuff like that. And I think that Me is, about embracing self-love and positivity and stuff. But I just think that it just, unfortunately, certain things like Hey Kids Spelling is Fun just took the limelight away from it. And obviously then upon its release, there was so many strange stuff going on in the fandom. Obviously with the Secret Life of Pets thing, the Starbucks debacle, which was a whole other thing. And then, which was quite funny that then Starbucks, when Taylor actually collabed with them for Red Taylor's version, then referenced it.
Yeah,
So I'm
that
glad
was
that
awkward.
now I'm glad that now it's actually kind of a bit of a joke. But at the time, it was just there was so many things going on in the fandom, and it was such a nightmare and a bit of a mess. It was like there's so much going on. Taylor was everywhere. It was just hard to kind of keep up with it all. I think that Lover era was a really kind of unique, and especially the Me kind of lead up was a really kind of unique time in the fandom that was just there was so much going on. It was so much going on, but like I said, it's not definitely not my favorite Taylor Swift song.
Hmm.
Definitely not my least favorite either, but it's not really one that I go to at all. If I listen to it, I normally listen to the Paris City of Lover performance version, purely because
Right.
Taylor sings the bridge, and I much prefer that. And I just quite like that the fans kind of shout that Hey Kids Spelling is Fun.
Like I said, I think the context was the key here. She wanted to release something completely different. And I do think that, and this is something that was brought up at that time that I saw, there was a lot of comparisons to the hate that Me received in comparison to other simple lyrics like Happy
Yeah,
by Pharrell Williams, Can't Stop the Feeling by Justin Timberlake. Everyone loves those songs. And
yeah,
I know that Happy, for example, is linked to
Despicable
Despicable
Me,
Me,
and so is Can't Stop the
and I
Feeling, like
think, yeah, exactly, which
Toby.
is an unfortunate comparison. However, they've become much more than just those songs like connected to them films. Like
Yeah,
everyone, I still hear them on the radio
me too.
nowadays,
Yeah.
and people like have grown up adults were singing it with no problems, and they enjoyed them. So. In a way, I think that the hate it received wasn't just because of the childish lyrics at some points, but because it was Taylor and it.
And for once, she wasn't so say this vengeful. So it was almost like
Mm,
there was nothing, there was no clickbait or
yeah, it's not
hate
about
or
an
shade in the
ex.
song.
It's
Yeah,
not exactly
that
so.
it was almost like, well, okay, so what can we say negatively about it? Because we can't say she only writes about her exes because she's not, and we can't say that
Exactly.
she's only writing about Kanye West drama because again she's
Because
not.
she's not.
So it was
Yeah.
like it was just like, oh, okay, well, it's childish. It's
Yeah.
just like, oh, it's a childish song. It's really childish. That's it.
With everything that we've gone through, the reception, the polarizing criticisms, records, the streams, and also your personal opinions and how the fandom views it, would you classify this song as a flop? What do you think?
No, not at all. Not at all. The song went number two. It broke like Vivo records. It was huge at the time. It's incredibly well known. I don't think it can be deemed a flop at all. I just think that it just didn't go down in the way that maybe it was intended to. But I don't think it was a flop at all. I think that, the performances, yeah. And people's love for it now, so people still absolutely love it.
I agree with you. Yeah, I don't think it was a flop. For me, music doesn't flop so long as it connects with a group of people and it can also contribute to the artist's personal career and growth. I
Yeah.
think Taylor really needed me and really needed the Lover era to go on with being able to express herself and get it all out. Just the same as that she needed Reputation, I think in the same way she needed Lover era as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, we've seen its success, and we've seen. I know a lot of people don't love it, but you can't argue against some of the streaming numbers and the love that a lot of people do have for it. So yeah, I agree. I don't think it was a flop.
Okay, so we've now come to the end of this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Do let us know in the comment section if you think that Me flopped and whether Me was the correct choice for the lead single of Lover. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us over on our Instagram at Swiftly Spoken Podcast, and like and rate us on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. Thank you again for listening.